Good morning, Malta and Gozo, and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm your host, Jonathan Cilia, joined by my co-host, Tim Diacono, and here are your headlines for today. Prime Minister clashes with PN leader over EGRANT in heated parliamentary session. Bathroom heater leak linked to RAMIRO and MALLIA'S fatal poisoning. Maltese woman who went for a skin checkup appointment turned away because of her tattoos. Hundreds signed petition against SLIEMA KIOSK, and former Gozo minister's husband cleared of abuse of public funds. Tim, you want to take us into the first story?
Yes, absolutely. So there was quite a heated debate in Parliament last night. Both PN leader Bernard Grech and the Prime Minister Rebecca Buttigieg delivered very impassioned and fiery speeches. Bernard Grech was referring to the recent allegations that a sitting minister might be implicated in the notorious failed heist on the HSBC bank 11 years ago. And he was saying how I see each and every single one of you, referring to the government MPs. I've had coffee with you in the corridors. I don't know, I could have been having coffee with a criminal for all I know. Then he began talking about himself as a gladiator, as a warrior in the arena, which led to the usual memes, obviously. And then it was the Prime Minister's turn, again, hitting out at the opposition, saying you want to give Jürgen Fenech a pardon, you're going to encourage him to ask for a pardon himself. But what else was of EGRANT, that you want an investigation to EGRANT, let's reopen the Zeppil Hafi case of 25 years ago or so. So yeah, I mean, I think it's entertaining but a bit childish.
Yeah.
Quite childish, I think, as in they're all serious cases. Zeppil Hafi is serious as well. Like why not investigate the EGRANT as well? I don't get what this resistance to an investigation is. Like why should we tribalize the quest for justice? Doesn't really make sense.
Fair point. I mean, we did analysis of both the opposition leaders as well as the Prime Minister's speeches last night. You can find them both on lovinmortal.com. But as you said yourself, it was a very heated, spirited debate. At points you did kind of feel like maybe you were in the kindergarten. I mean, there were some really, really iconic lines. Some point Abela said, quote, when you point a finger, 4 fingers are pointing back. Greg said, we have to take this country back from these criminals. They not only stole our money, they stole the soul of our nation. Abela said, quote, you guys don't know how to be positive. All you know how to do is say who needs to be sent to prison next. So very, very strong comments from both sides of the room. Like I said, you can find the breakdown of both speeches on lovinmortal.com. Moving on to the next story, a very tragic story that happened earlier this week. The tragic death of 19-year-old Ormi youth, Ramiro Mallia. There's some more developments in his case. It seems like he died as a result of carbon monoxide poisoning in the blood, as a result of a leak in a bathroom heater. Shockingly, it seemed like Ramiro was showering at the time when he inhaled this carbon monoxide and passed out. His mother found him, so I can't even imagine what she went through when she found her son passed out on the floor, unconscious. Called paramedics. Paramedics, rushed to their house in Ormi. They tried to revive the youth, but he unfortunately died in Mater Dei. So I think it does shed a bit of a light on the real risk that carbon monoxide poisoning can cause and lead to, especially when you have a heater in an enclosed area, such as a bathroom often is. The chairman of the emergency department at Mater Dei, Michael Spiteri, urged the use of people to install carbon monoxide detectors, saying, quote, they're just a few euros and they can literally save your life. So carbon monoxide isn't something that I had really ever heard of or been aware of. Obviously, you hear about it in the background, but now that it's happened in Malta, in Ormi, I think we should be definitely paying attention to this potentially fatal issue across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So the thing with carbon monoxide is it's odorless and you can't even see it. So basically, you don't even know what's happening to you, but it's killing you, which is extremely scary, especially seeing as it can be emitted from such a common household appliance, as I'm sure we all have it. Most of us have in our homes. So yes, it is food for thought, and absolute tragedy what happened, but yes, hopefully it can be prevented from happening again. Moving on to our third story, so quite a strange one. A heavily tattooed Maltese woman went for what she thought was a regular skin checkup at a dermatologist, and she pointed out to some moles on her skin that she wanted removed. obviously, there's a good reason why she'd want to do that. But somehow the dermatologist began speaking about her tattoos, saying like, why do you care about the mole if you have all these tattoos on, have some kind of campaign against tattoos. And she was confused, and eventually it winded up with the woman being asked to leave the clinic, and obviously she's complaining about it. Now, it's bizarre. We don't exactly know what happened. We've reached out to the health ministry to try and find out exactly what the protocol and the procedure is and what happened over here. But yes, if you've heard anything like this, if this has happened to you, you can reach out to us at Lovin Malta, and because we're looking into this.
Definitely no. The fact that it's 2021 and tattoos are still being stigmatized, or even worse so at a skin clinic. I can't even imagine being someone who's going for a checkup on something that's potentially health related, such as moles, and instead the clinic staff start talking about your tattoos and eventually ask you to leave. Now, it's very important to note that this was happening at a public clinic. This is not a private clinic. We've reached out to the health ministry for a reaction on this story, so definitely follow Lovin Malta for a reaction to this later on. Moving on to the next story. So obviously SLIEMA's promenade is dotted with kiosks, but a new kiosk has angered residents to the point that a petition has been launched. A group called Free Our Pavements have got up to 500 signatures, at least up until last night, against this new kiosk. It's a new white kiosk. You can find designs of it as well as photos on the initial structure on lovinmalta.com. But the group said, quote, we can no longer suffer and watch our promenade being stripped of its main purpose of relaxation. And they later said that the SLIEMA promenade had been raped by kiosks. So obviously the SLIEMA promenade is a beautiful boulevard. It's very wide, you can walk on it, but kiosks are very much part and parcel of the area.
Yeah.
I can imagine SLIEMA residents might react strongly to this. I don't live in SLIEMA, so I can't speak, but a petition has been launched against this new kiosk.
Yeah, I mean the issue is obviously that SLIEMA is just completely, there's development on every single corner you look on, and SLIEMA residents look at the front often as a bit of a reprieve from all of this, and seeing that even that is getting a bit brutalized again. Kiosks are all well and good, but sometimes you just want an open space, just somewhere to walk or run without anything blocking your way. So, yeah. Moving on to our final story of the day. Tony De Bono, the husband of former Gozo Minister Giovanna De Bono, has been cleared of abuse of public funds by a court. So this story goes back a few years ago when a whistleblower had alleged that Tony De Bono was abusing of his office at the Gozo Ministry, where he also worked when his wife was minister. Make of that as you will. And that he was using his office for constituency work. So basically using public funds for electoral purposes. Now this was quite a scandal a few years ago. It actually led to the resignation of Giovanna De Bono from the Nationalist Party, so they're taking it quite seriously. However, a court found that there wasn't enough evidence to back this up. It doesn't mean it wasn't true. I don't know. I mean, the allegations came from somewhere, but it just goes to show, right, how difficult it is to go from an allegation to something that's substantial evidence in court, right? So it's one thing to say I've seen this, another thing to actually prove it in a court of law.
Very, very true. No, this case has been dragging on for years. It was a massive scandal when it erupted, and it gets mentioned every few years. And obviously, several figures from the PN, from the Nationalist Party, took to social media, took to Facebook. I think Bernard Grech even mentioned it in Parliament yesterday. For example, PN MP Jason Otsupardi said, while praising the judgment, he said that now it was clear that the incident was, quote, a frame-up by the Labour Party against Giovanna. So, there's been quite a strong reaction to it. I can't even imagine the family themselves. They must be, very relieved that finally, after all these years, this shadow's been removed from them. So it's good to see that the case has finally come to an end. Do not leave right now, because we've got a very, very special guest interview with a new young Labour candidate coming up, Rebecca Buttigieg. But right before that, we're going to cut to a video we did recently where we spoke to a homeless man living on the streets of Malta.
Nibda ngħid immala jiena ma nistax ikolli fimtni xi ħaġa bħal ħadd ieħor. sraqt biex nikol, jiġifieri mhux xi valur inqas minn 6 euro. Xi kultant nibda ngħid aħjar sraqt veru kif suppost, milli sraqt li xorta tħalt il-ħab. Jien ħriġ barra u spiċċajt qiegħed niffaċċja ruħi mal-realtà kera għalija, fimni għax nippreferi li kieku għadni il-ħabs tal-istat jiena. Meta tkun arrestat, ma tistax la tgħid ħad titkellem ma' xi ħadd biex jista' jgħinek għax tista' titla' llum u jgħidlek ism inti toħroġ minn hemm. Naf li hija kontra liġi li saqsi lin-nisa l-għajnuna, imma nisraq ma rridx fimtni biex tiekol eċċetera. Titmiem filgħodu sa filgħaxija trid toqgħod issaqsi. Din naqas benefiċċju ma nista' nieħu għax laqqas għandi indirizz. Kumdita qatt ma jista' jkollok għax hawn min għandu d-dar u laqas għandu kumdita, sepura bniedem li jiġu triq. Malta hija ħaġa li n-nies għadhom ma jistgħux jaċċettaw li hawn nies jorqdu barra. Jarawhom u xorta jibqgħu jgħidu li m'hawnx fimtni. Jorqdu ġimgħa barra u jridu jsibu xogħol u r-risposta jagħduha waħedhom. Biex tmur għax-xogħol trid ikollok fejn torqod, biex tmur għax-xogħol trid ikollok fejn tiekol, biex tmur għax-xogħol mhux se tmur għax-xogħol u fil-għaxija torqod fuq bank. Ma tħossokx ferħan u tqum filgħodu laqas taf fejn sejjer.
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. With me now is Rebecca Buttigieg, new candidate for the Labour Party who will be contesting on the 10th district at the next election. Hi, Rebecca.
Hi, Tim. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining Lovin Daily today. So, Rebecca, some people, often say that politics in Malta is too brutal, too dirty, too underhanded. It doesn't even pay well. So, why did you, a 27-year-old, decide to take the plunge and contest an election?
My decision to run did not happen overnight. I've been active in politics for almost a decade now because I started being involved at a local level when I was 18. And by being an activist and interacting closely with my community in Gżira, I came to realize how decisions made by politicians impact everyone from all walks of life. They can be the biggest policy issues like climate change, like sustainable development, like quality education, or the small things, like introducing Maltese fonts on the public registry. At the end of the day, politics impacts us all. So the bottom line is that every decision counts. And that is why I decided to kind of get off the sidelines and make my voice heard. I also think that it's really important that we have more young female voices in Parliament. And at the end of the day, we're the future generation. So if it's not us in Parliament making decisions which will impact us down the line, then we really need to stand up and be counted.
So what are you going to prioritize? You mentioned climate change, you mentioned Maltese fonts. What would your priorities be if you get elected to Parliament?
I am contesting a 10th district because I am from Gżira and I've been brought up there, I grew up there, and also the neighbouring localities which form part of the district. And over there, the main concerns have to do with sustainable development. Of course, over the past few years, in these 10 years, I would say, all localities, Gżira, SLIEMA, St. Julian's, Pembroke, have been impacted by the economic boom, both positively and negatively. On the positive side, we've seen a lot of development, which has increased property prices in the area. So our value, the value of someone's property in the area has increased exponentially, which just has given a huge opportunity for someone even to rent out their property or even to demolish it, and also
It also made it harder for other people to buy.
Exactly, but that's the downside to it. And the downside to the economic boom has been that a lot of residents have had to move out of their houses over there because they could no longer afford it. And also we've seen that there has been a lot of development going on. For example, in my street sometimes there has also been 4 construction sites going on at the same time. In no way do I want to sound like I am against development, because at the end of the day, development is very important also for our economy. However, I think there needs to be more regulation. We need to have more standards in this case, so that development can be done. It can also be done properly, you know, with proper standards. The fact that it's not of such, it can be a nightmare for those who live next door to a construction site. I am the first one to write and ask and urge the government to introduce more standards in this sector, and I think that's the way forward we really need to push on.
So this issue of standards, this is referring to the way the construction is actually carried out to make it as to reduce the inconvenience to residents as much as possible, right?
It's not just that. There are a number of factors you can include. For example, the fact that most of the time construction sites are not covered properly with that, you know, there is a lot of air pollution that is going on. For example, in Gżira, the air pollution is really, really bad. In fact, a lot of people can have, you know, respiratory diseases due to that construction. Having said that, it's not just that, it's also an aesthetic thing. If you follow the page Ugly Malta on Instagram, you see a lot of photos of, you know, high rises that are going on, which really stick out and are a real eyesore. If you go abroad, you see so many high rises, but they don't have to be, you know, done in such a way that kind of they hurt your touristic product as well at the same time. And I think that's where we have to go. It's a step forward which we need to make.
So do you think the future of towns like Gżira, towns like SLIEMA, and towns like St. Julian's is high rise, that we need a few high-rise buildings but aesthetically pleasing?
We need to accept the fact that those are touristic areas, that there has been a lot of development over the past few years, and there's no going back now. So now it is up to us to make sure that we embrace this direction in a more sustainable manner. So for example, if we are having high-rise buildings, we actually make them look, there should be some guidelines that one has to follow, so that not one is red and one is blue, for example, or one is 30 stories and another one is 50. We need to have some sort of symmetry, so we can also develop our touristic product. At the end of the day, these localities all attract a number of tourists, especially during the summer months, so it's up to us to make sure that they are very well inviting.
So you're saying, like, for example, that if someone wants to build a skyscraper in Gżira, it has to be the same size as 14 East?
It doesn't have to be, but I think there needs to be, there needs to be a conversation. First of all, there needs to be an economic impact on these high-rises. There has to be an environmental impact. For example, we know that if there are high-rising, we need to make sure that there are ample parking spaces. Parking problems is a huge issue for residents of both Gżira, SLIEMA, St. Julian's, Pembroke. All the residents complain that they do not have enough parking, and these are issues that we need to discuss, because most of the time in this country, we did not plan ahead more than 5 years, and I think that's what Labour did in 2013. We've seen projects that have more of a long-term effect. If we take infrastructure, the infrastructure projects are being taken on right now are for a long period of time, not just 5 years until the next election rolls around. And I think we need to sit down around the table, discuss where we want to go from here and what we want our country to look like in the next 50 years.
So, as someone from Gżira, there aren't that many public places to relax, many green places. What there really is Manuel Island, but even that is now being overrun by developers and there's cranes everywhere. There's also a garden which a petrol station might eat up into. What can a person from Gżira do to enjoy themselves? They have to just admit, like, look, we have to just go to another town if I want some green spaces because the developers have taken it over?
No, I don't think that should be our perspective, in the sense that it's us residents know what we want in our locality, and if it's not us who are pushing to bring the change that we want to see, then we will be overrun by these projects that you have mentioned. It is very sad to see that we've seen petrol stations. We've also seen something that you mentioned before, the kiosks on the SLIEMA front. Again, it's very good to have business. SLIEMA and Gżira are business hubs. However, let's do it in a proper way. For example, if we have the promenade, can we have kiosks that do not make it an obstacle course for you to go for a simple walk, even with your dog? Let's have a symmetry over there. There are a number of kiosks which sell cruises, for example, or a boat trip. Let's have them all looking the same in specific diameters. So, you know, it's not one over here and one over there. I think we need to act. We need to see that we have more public space, in the sense that our quality of life depends a lot on our open spaces as well. We are lucky enough to be seaside towns, so we should make full use of that as well.
So you work as a communications coordinator for the Home Affairs Ministry. In your job, what's it like hearing all these very serious accusations about institutions you work very close with, such as that the police or elements in the police are corrupt, or that the prison leadership is a dictatorship? You work very closely with them. How do you feel when you hear these accusations?
As you said, I work very closely with them, and these accusations I don't think represent the hard work that they really, really do. And of course, there are you can never. Not everyone will be on board with the leadership style or with the certain policies that are introduced. However, I urge everyone to be fair and understanding. Law enforcement has a very difficult job, especially in the pandemic, where they had to take on a new role also when it comes to enforcement. So I think we should not rush to judge when they are doing their job.
What's the biggest misconception that people might have about the police?
I think some misconceptions are that even, for example, right now when they are enforcing with the pandemic, that there is this perception that they are just giving fines left, right and center with no reason at all. It's not the case. No one enjoys giving fines because at the end of the day you do get some sort of antagonism. However, they are there to protect us. So I urge more cooperation from the public, because at the end of the day, if we're all in this together, and we will only beat it if we do follow the regulations.
To be fair, there were also some instances of police being a bit too heavy with the fines, right? So there were cases of someone just having lunch at a table, and the police came and straight away fined them straight away.
That is why there are petitions. There is a petition board, and everyone has the right to appeal that fine if they feel that they have been fined in a wrong manner.
But overall, you're convinced that their attitude is one that they want to help people rather than just dish out fines.
Definitely. Someone does not become a policeman, or someone does not become a fireman or a community official, just to hand out fines and to get a lot of sometimes rude words back, Mm-hmm. They're there to help people. It's a dedication. It's a profession that, if you do not love what you do, you're not in it.
What about the prison? So there's a lot of discussion about it recently. What's your experience there?
Again, these people deal with some of the most dangerous people in our society. At the end of the day, I always like to think of this example back in summer when there was the double murder in SLIEMA. The police had arrested one of the individuals who was allegedly responsible for this murder, and everyone really applauded the police. And obviously, we also saw the scenes in Floriana, with shots being fired. It was a very dangerous situation, and everyone was really happy that they're caught and that they're now in prison. However, it is the prison officials who have to deal with these people every day, so we have to take into account the danger that they are in, and also that's not an easy job to make sure that they are kept safe and sound.
So yesterday you said that you decided to become a candidate to the Labour Party because of what we saw tonight. That was a reference to the Prime Minister's speech in Parliament. What did you like about it?
I think it showed that he was a very strong leader in a time when we do need strong leadership in the country. We have to remember that even amidst all this political chaos that is going on, we are in the middle of a pandemic, and we need to ensure that the country's leadership has its priorities straight, which means that they need to find a balance between saving lives and livelihoods. And I think that is the balance that the government continues to strive for every single day. And it's very important that we have a Prime Minister who does have these priorities in front of him, and also when it comes to all these allegations that there is in court. We have to remember that this was the government, Robert Abella's tenureship as Prime Minister. He has introduced unprecedented set of reforms in just a span of 1 year, reforms that have strengthened our institutions, and we are now seeing the results of them today. I always like to mention the police commissioner. The police commissioner, for the first time, has been publicly appointed through a public call. That had never happened before, and now we are all I think there are no doubts that we have a commissioner who is credible, who is also doing his job, and the results speak for themselves.
But fair enough, but when you say, a good leadership, things like you want to open EGRANT, like why don't we open Zeppil Hafi instead? You just want to send people to prison. Like, don't you think it's being a bit too childish and too partisan with some very serious accusations that aren't really, they refer to politics, but they're also about justice at the end of the day.
I disagree, because at the end of the day, this party and this government, its credentials speak for themselves, in the sense that when the cabinet was faced with a request for a pardon, it was handled with the utmost care and utmost responsibility. And I think it's very important for the Prime Minister.
Which pardon? Not the one of Melvin Toma?
both pardons were treated with utmost care. However, I'm talking about the latest one when we're talking about Roberta Bella. Of course, it's very important to remember and to strike that contrast, because when we hear the opposition talking about the rule of law, we must remember that when the Nationalist Party was in government, the situation was completely different, in the sense that when they were faced with a request for a pardon, that was not treated with the utmost care, and in fact, the Prime Minister took it upon himself to issue a presidential pardon and not even discuss it with cabinet, and it was done not even in his office, but allegedly under a bridge somewhere in Malta. And I think these are very important, especially for us who are young and who might not remember exactly what happened back then. But we need to ensure that I think this balance is really important, and to strike this contrast that from one hand you have a Labour Party in government who actually believes in the institutions and actually makes the reforms that are important enough to make sure that the institutions who are in charge of delivering justice actually do that. And I think the results speak for themselves. On the other hand, you do have an opposition leader who thinks, and if you hear him speak, he thinks that he has a clean slate, but at the end of the day, the baggage of the Nationalist Party needs to be taken into account when we're talking about issues of rule of law.
Absolutely, no, it's a good point to bring these things up, but then again, one would also expect that he would bring up the fact that even Joseph Muscat gave a pardon to Melvin Toma without consulting his cabinet as well.
I think that both, at the end of the day, Melvin Toma is being given a pardon for his testimony in court, and we're seeing that testimony giving results. So at the end of the day, that pardon is justified. When we're seeing pardons were given in the past, we have never seen prosecutions resulting from those pardons, and I think that is the most pertinent issue.
So finally, just to wrap this up, the Prime Minister recently announced that he's going to be launching some kind of white paper on cannabis reform. What reform do you think, how should the reform look like in your opinion?
Personally, I am for legalization of cannabis. However, I was very, very happy to see that the Prime Minister and the Cabinet and the government is going to be issuing this white paper, which also pushes the limits of possession to reasonable levels, so that young people who are users will avoid being interrogated by the police and also face legal proceedings. At the end of the day, I will be happy with any developments that are made in this regard, because I think it's a very important issue to take note. As I said before, personally I am for legalization. However, if we ensure that people are not penalized for smoking personal joints, I think that is a very good goal to achieve.
What about cannabis social clubs?
I'm not such a fan of those. However, I think we need to have a discussion to see how they can be regulated. At the end of the day, we are a very small country and we need to have the information put to us. The discussion needs to be based on information, because if we have to model ourselves against countries like, for example, Amsterdam, which is the most obvious example you could bring, the two societies are two completely different scenarios. So I think we need to adapt to our society.
Or Barcelona, maybe?
I think the argument still stands.
Rebecca Buttigieg, thank you very much for accepting this interview.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for following us on Lovin Daily. Make sure you follow lovinmalta.com for all the latest developments on what's going on in the country. And until we meet again, have a day full of lovin'.